DM-Nastics, the gym for dungeon masters to work out their minds. I'm one of your hosts, DM Neil, a.k.a. Jote Maniac.
And it's me, your other host, DM Celeste, a.k.a. Sea Witch.
Dun, dun, dun. Today, Barrow been built. Because it's alliteration. It is one of the key methods by which I will name things.
Yes.
Either I think it's funny or it's alliteration. And if I could get both together, wow.
That's the sweet treat. That's the sweetest treat.
Yeah. Like the previous one, Build a Barrow. As if to reference Build-A-Bear.
Yes.
Where DM Derek and I talked about building a barrow and having smaller dungeons. I know we've started to allude to that because I'll be comfortable in a dungeon forever. Celeste, you know that well enough.
I love me a mega dungeon.
I can easily do it. But one of the other key pieces about a mega dungeon is going in and just exploring a little bit and leaving.
Mm-hmm.
That's 100% okay. It's how original Undermountain was approached.
Yep.
You would typically have a quest that you would do. You would go, you would complete that quest, and you would leave. Sometimes you would get distracted and die a terrible death. That is also an option. Or you would go on your adventures and find another entrance to another part of Undermountain.
Yeah.
And you would go and do those quests. So building out smaller pieces, I think works really well because you can move them around.
Oh yeah. And then every mega dungeon has those themed sections, right? Whether you want to divide them by floors or different regions, that's your opportunity to shake things up in a meaningful way. So really designing smaller dungeons is really just making pieces that can go together in the big awesome jigsaw puzzle of a bigger dungeon.
Yep. Just Zelda your way through it.
Just do
this
it.
Is the water temple.
Here we go.
Your favorite, everyone. Your favorite. So, on the Discord, if you head over there, there is an exercise that I affectionately named Barrow Been Built. So I made a small dungeon that basically looks like a hand, and and then theory abound. Is it, in fact, a deity's hand? Was it a gauntlet that once fell to earth and now has crumbled away? That's kind of where, the vibe leans.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same way, it could just be some dwarves that decided that'd be a cool way to build a dungeon. So basically, it's your standard 5-room dungeon plus the palm. So it's 6 rooms, if you will, each finger being its own room. Basically, we threw it out there, choose a room, build a trap. But this also harkens back to DMB episode 232, Haunted Traps, with a frequent guest, someone we're a huge fan of, Mackenzie DeArmas. And the idea of haunted traps was really interesting. So
because haunted traps was something they introduced in Wizards introduced in the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft for the first time. So we got to see some spooky mechanics going on. Yeah.
And when you think about it, especially if you think a really old dungeon, or even if you're thinking about the Indiana Jones of traps, there's often dead people or, dead characters or whatever.
Around,
NPCs or anything.
A good trap has many corpses.
Yeah.
All around it.
And you're well, you know what? Maybe their souls are at unrest because they just didn't feel like that's a trap that should have got them. And now they haunt that area and all the things associated. So that leads us to some of these amazing entries. Copy paste, just straight into your game style entries.
Good stuff.
On the forum. So which one did you want to look at right now?
Yeah, I think my favorite one was so somebody did Letter Lost, fan favorite, Letter Lost, hello, again. Your ring finger dungeon room was very clever. So what I liked it seems like most people went kind of puzzle, haunted puzzles, which I with really trap consequences, which I was super here for. Love me a good puzzle. And Letter Lost continued that trend with the ring finger room. Basically, the idea is when you enter the room, you see all these large metal rings on the floor, and the rings are way bigger than something you'd actually put on your hand, but you see one wall is a mirror, and through the mirror you can see that there's a gauntlet with the fingers extended. And so the idea is basically you figure out that you can pick up the rings, and it's a ring toss situation, because when you toss the rings through the mirror, they shrink down to the actual size and can land on the hand. So basically you have to put the rings back on the hand to complete the room. And I was that's just a really cool thing. One, very tricky to figure out at first, for the players, but obviously so satisfying once you do. And, just getting that feeling of a carnival style game right in the middle of this dungeon. Super neat. And then, of course, they went with a haunted twist, which I thought was very cool. So once you put the rings on the hand, it's revealed the full figure that it's like a ghost bride, like creature thing through the mirror, right? And the whole reason this person was trapped, right? The bride was there, it was because somebody basically put one of the rings on their fingers outside and then pushed them through the mirror. And like, I was like, well, this is so cool, whatever. And then the consequence, of course, if you fail or not, or if you succeed, you might have a ghost bride that haunts you and shows up at short or long rests and is like, let's plan our wedding, darling. And I'm like, this is so good. There are just so many details in this that are just fantastic.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about the idea of what does haunting mean?
Yeah.
Like it often isn't just like, stabs, attacks, ghostly, all these things. In my mind, that's not really haunting.
Yeah.
Just this ghost that shows up sometimes when you sleep and asks when you're going to get married.
Like how scary is that? That's haunted. You are officially haunted if that happens.
And that's the kind of thing that like you could set out on these quests to go get rid of. I think about you could tell from my background, it's Rick and Morty, but I watch it. It's like kind of my go-to show of like throwing on. But one of the scenes he's there where he made basically an AI of his wife that had passed that's always one room away to haunt him.
Yeah.
The voice will never be in the room that he's in, and there's no holographic image. It's literally like, "Hey Rick, how you doing?"
Yeah.
She's like, "That's right, Diane. You're always one room away. Wouldn't be very good at haunting if I wasn't." And so it's like those kinds of like, this. But I also thought how interesting it would be to layer those elements in as they're trying to solve the puzzle.
Yeah.
Like having the haunting happen just during the puzzles, during the traps, and letting like that be more of the haunted element of just in the moment, and giving me possibly like seeing a player react a little bit more and like letting that be disadvantage.
Yeah.
Or if they don't react, like even getting genuine reactions from the players and choosing to give advantage or disadvantage rather than even rolling, just making those decisions.
Yeah, or like it would be really interesting is if like to complete the puzzle, that whoever puts that last ring, like gets the toss on there, is going to be the betrothed of the ghost, right? And like you have to solve the puzzle to like get out of this room, but so one of you has to step up to the plate and basically agree to be haunted, right? Like making that final toss. So like what a drama moment for the party. Like who is going to be that person? Is anyone willing to do that? Or, not like that's a good, character development, like who's going to take one for the team moment.
Yeah. Cause one of the main conceits of like this small dungeon was that in the central area, there is some ghostly haunted type figure
like
that basically is guarding, guarding the MacGuffin. And the only way you even get a shot at the MacGuffin is to then go solve all the riddles and traps and everything.
Defeat the rooms.
Defeat the 5 rooms and then go from there. So it's like, someone has to
do it.
This. Yeah.
Yeah. So fantastic. Great job, Letter Lost. Did you have one you wanted to highlight, Neil?
So the one I want to highlight is from Sword Spear, and this focuses on the middle finger, which is a test of speed. So basically, which I think it's such a good A/B connection that I wouldn't have initially made of like, it's the longest room.
Yeah.
Make a test of speed.
Yeah.
And so everything looks like this mosaic where, wild birds, grass, everything. And basically, the original test is small sign on the door says, upon entering the room, you shall have 10 turns of the glass to unite mothers and children thrice. And basically, you have 10 turns to locate 3 empty nests that have tiles missing. Mm-hmm. And then you basically have to decide like what birds and eggs. And like basically, you're completing this mosaic and you have 10 turns to do it. Now, the haunted test is all of the above, but as soon as the characters touch a basket, the door slams shut and the scenery changes. The ground now includes mosaics of pecked and pecked to death adventurers. And the trees darken and become more gnarled. And basically, you're just going to get attacked by birds the entire time that you're trying to solve this.
It's horrible.
But you still have to basically put the mom bird and the eggs back together to not end up like the adventurers that you now see in the mosaics. Which is...
It's good. It's freaky. Very
Hitchcock. Like depending on your campaign, which is always a great qualifier, I'd kill an NPC and have them fall into the mosaic.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. Or if you had like a summoned creature, or you had a familiar, or you had, I feel like a familiar would be a really good choice because the player has the ability to either
they can make a new one.
Yeah, recast the ritual, go through actions and things like that. But having the birds attack something that is most like them, typically your familiar is another bird potentially, or bat, rat, cat, anything that rhymes with it. Sat. That's not it. but having it morph into the mosaic, and then the players just be like, oh no, this is not great. This can't be good. He's like, what if we solve it? Yeah, will it go back to the other scene, and now what? Where?
I like too that he specifically points out, or they specifically point out that the birds in the haunted version, they're all mummified eggs and birds, in the painting. And I'm like, that is just a very scary and cool haunting image, right? These petrified fossil eggs that you're returning to whatever. I did with this one though. I was wondering how you would gamify it in a way, add the mechanics to make it work in the context of a game, because I think you could do things like they suggest in here, kind of maybe nature checks or something to identify the birds, but I would probably make this a full-on, more like a puzzle like you might find in an escape room or something, and maybe have if you touch certain eggs, you play a bird call, an auditory bird call, right? And then you have some pictures printed out from the internet of different birds, and you're linking them up, right? That could be a cool, set a timer for your players and then use audio visual elements to make this happen.
I really, really like that. And also having, because you have a term. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'd love to have a discussion about term limits, but that's not for this podcast. But basically you have turn limits. So it's I pick up this egg. Okay, cool. That's okay. Now,
there you go. Yeah.
What do you do? Is it that they're figuring out how to hand things off because time constraints? Is someone distracting the birds and that's what they're choosing to do with their time? And so I think you could, with the visual elements and the time restriction, that you could really have a very fun room.
And you can keep it simple, right? Because everybody knows what an owl sounds like versus a crow, so just as long as you don't get too tricky with your picks, unless you have an ornithologist at your table, just don't be too mean. Or your druid player will feel bad that, because their characters should know what that is. But if the whoop whoop sounds the same to most humans.
There's 3 owls.
There's 3 owls, slightly different.
Yeah.
Calls. You idiot.
Oh my gosh. God. This is what it sounds like when it's flying. It's owls.
Oh no, nothing. The softest grain of wheat moving across a table. Oh my God.
Well, I think we've done it. I think those are amazing, but that means that you and I get to lift the mental weights right now.
Lifting weights is what I do. Look at me. Lift these weights.
Okay. I have been inspired by Sword Spear by taking the idea of the middle finger being the longest and it being a speed test. Now, opening the door to the index finger. Clearly, it needs to be lined with shelves with books on them.
Yeah, those immediately, I was indexing, intelligence, heck yeah.
So, yeah, because you've already, there was some charisma elements to the bride and the ring. This is focused primarily on the bird one can focus on a ton of different things, but I think speed is really the factor that you're looking at the most. Whereas this, intelligence, I think is really, really good. So how are we going to create either a puzzle, a trap? Which I know you're a huge fan of. So I'm very excited to hear what is an idea. And then obviously we'll try and figure out the haunted element for the index finger.
So let's see. With lots of books, there are a lot of different things you can do, but immediately my mind goes to like finding the right books and then arranging them in a particular way. So something you could do is like, if you have a certain like word you need to fill in or something, like it's like 7 slots or whatever, and you need to find books that start with that letter, right? Like in some kind of phrase. So, you might have like a random generator table of a bunch of different like book names, and then have to have the players figure out that they need to place the books correctly to get, like Aziza's Guide to, Alphabet, is going to be your A, right, in that spot. So you could do that, or you could have to, if you have like 20 books in the room, they might need to arrange them all, like maybe find book titles that start with the same letter and end with the same letter as the next book in the line. So that way you could arrange them all in like a ritual circle that you need to like boop out of the room or something like that.
Okay, I'm going to try and find this. It may take me a quick second, but there's a game. Well, whatever. It's all nebulous. All right. So I watch Hank Green. He approaches things in an interesting way sometimes, and it comes up on like my YouTube page. Not subscribed. Well done, YouTube algorithm, all that. Sometimes what he'll do to like kind of like almost decompress after like talking through, which is also interesting that it's also content that he has on the end of a video, is he'll basically do like a Wordle style equivalent game.
Ooh.
Where it is a bunch of words.
Yeah.
And you're trying to select 4 of them and deciding why they go together. Like, so, reverse that. You're deciding why they go together, and then you select 4 of them, and it will be like, yeah, great job. Here's why they were all together.
Yeah.
And I think, kind of going off of the idea of having like a visual element, coming up with even D&D or campaign specific, world specific ideas of like NPCs or history or all of these things, and saying like, okay, so which 4 do you think go together?
Yeah.
And like matching them. And having it be that way, or even having, like you said, these 4 are there. So what's a 5th one?
Yeah.
Like now that you've determined, or you think think you've determined why these 4 are together. What is a 5th book? Okay, look through. Here are some other book options that are either on other shelves, on the floor, on a table. Which book do you think you could add to this to make it the 5th? And of course, I mean, so then what's a haunted element, I think, for failure of any of the ideas that we've put forth?
Well, you often think when books like, poltergeists come to mind, like throwing stuff around a room. So maybe if that's the problem, not only is it just all these books and you have to do something with them, but if they're like being flung across the room and like flying through the air and aggressively pummeling you, maybe you have to fight and restrain, the books. So it makes it that much harder to see what they are and then also wrangle them. So it kind of gives your strength and, speed people something to do while your brainiacs are sitting there maybe actually doing the puzzle, and other people are literally catching the haunted books that are trying to escape. Or you could have the books opening up and like screaming and doing psychic nonsense.
I like a reordering as well of just like a thing that like even success or failure. Like you did it and now you got to, here step 2 and just everything just starts reordering on all the shelves.
It would be so great if the puzzle was like, here we go, and they think they solve it right, and they put the books in place, and then immediately when they put them in place, if they don't take steps to hold the books down, the books fly back apart, whatever, and like so basically, okay, you solved it, but you need to find a way to solve it and then also keep the books from moving, like, have enough of you to hold them down, or like arrange, strap them down somehow.
Yeah.
Or something. Or, oh my God, what if you had a ghost, like a librarian ghost, and you had to do it in complete silence? And that was the thing. And anybody who talked was like lost their life or got like false touched or whatever. So you as players cannot talk to each other to solve the puzzle. All you can do is like write notes or whatever. And any noises you make and somebody is getting, dragged to hell.
You're making me, now that you unlocked a piece of my brain that like I am ultimately excited and just insanely frustrated about is that the idea of quickly adding in either physical or digital elements to help you play the game. So you've unlocked a piece of my brain. And one of the ones that I was thinking of that you could physically do, especially if you're not talking, it's called The Mind. So it's a game where you basically, depending on how many players you have, you're dealing out a certain number of cards.
Yeah.
And when we start the game, what collectively we as a group need to do is lay them down in numeric order. But we have to do it without talking. And if let's say I throw down a 5, and then the next one you throw down a 20 because you think, oh, maybe that's close enough because it's 1 to 100. But then another person had a 15. Well, you lose a life.
Yeah.
And then obviously in this context, you would set up some negative element, but it's all through nonverbal cues.
Nice. Yeah.
And so like everyone's kind of like,
right.
or you're just trying to get a good vibe, or like everyone's just like doing nothing,
trying to use hand signals to figure it out, somehow. Yeah.
But it also has positive elements where like you have certain things where you can like cancel things out, or just like throw something down and like everyone stops and you like kind of talk about you can talk a little bit, and then like one person definitely sets down the next one, and then you start again. So there's a lot of those. And it took me a while. It's called Connections. That's the other game with Hank Green that I was talking about, where basically you're trying to put 4 groups of 4 together, and each of the 4 groups is you have basically one of the groups should be the easiest, and then go through that. But basically that would be another really interesting way to do it, where you have them either play Connections, because like this one, the one that I pulled up is like Connections number 603, and like none of these are real world. Like, so if you're not trying to break that particular piece of immersion, is little, wedge, snap, screw, zing. Like none of these are names of characters. Right. Sometimes that happens. Just choose another one. Hit refresh. You'll be fine. So yeah, there's so many options.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I love the visual of describing this. Like, the characters running around the room doing their best, and right away you had the scary ghost, like first thing they enter the room, the shh like moment, right? And like that feeling of silence, and then that ghost like sitting there with a bloody like axe or something right where the books are, as like just waiting for somebody to mess up. Like so good.
It has such
good
horror movie elements.
Yes.
That's what I think of I enjoy watching that genre. I know not everyone does. So again, know your players, know your table. But the idea of like that jump scare, or just that haunting moment,
like it's there staring you, you're doom staring you in the
still
face.
Needs to complete a task, and they're just, you often think of dripping. Something's dripping, and they're just like face to face.
Oh my god! Or you could do now I'm good. Now I'm just gonna design these puzzles now.
Let's go.
But it would be so cool if the books, like your information about them, when you touched one, it opened it up and it had like an Edward Gorey style, like little, this is how X person died, like Susie died of pneumonia, right? And like whatever. And then it's those words, right, that are giving you the things. And just clues. The gruesome ways adventurers have been like murdered is what you're seeing on the pages. Oh.
Okay. This we'll put a bow on this with this last and terrible choice, where the wizard's spellbook gets haunted and the strength grows with each cast.
Yeah.
And eventually
it becomes sentient and horrible and messed up.
Something emerges forth from them.
Cool. Terrible index finger of doom. It is the point. It's the finger used for Finger of Death and all the other ones. So it makes sense that this one would have to be the most messed up one, right?
Yeah. All I have to say, and we didn't really the big MacGuffin is kind of the thing, but I would also definitely have some carrots at the end of all these terrible sticks that we've made. And having a library is a very easy way to do that, especially, that feels really manipulative to some degree of you found these brand new spells. Oh, well, I'd love to add them to my spell book. I bet you would.
Of course you would. You fool.
Neil, why do you keep saying that in that tone? No reasons.
I'm fine. Chase your bliss.
Yay. But, of course, if you enjoyed this episode as much as I think we did in making it, then you can always head over to your podcatcher of choice, leave a rating and review. Word on the street is it helps. And, of course, if you want to email us about any of the trap ideas, especially haunted ones that you've made, you can always email us at dungeonmasterblock@gmail.com. And, of course, if you head over to social medias, typically we're at DMS_block. That's at DMsBlock. And I am at Jote Maniac. And
I am at C. Conowitch.
Go find us. We're searchable.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
Yeah.
But as always, a huge thank you to the bards over on Bombarded for our intro and outro music. And you can find more about what they're doing at bombardedcast.com. But rather than let these mythical gains go to waste, let's head to taking your supplements.
Taking your supplements.
Celeste, supplement.
Yes. So I have something to talk about that is a really, really cool and interesting TTRPG that has really struck my husband's fancy in particular lately. And the more I hear about it, the cooler it is. And so I'm holding it right now. It's called Ultraviolet Grasslands and the Black City, written by Luca Rizek. And this book is just a wild, like, campaign setting that if you ever enjoyed anything even vaguely like Spelljammer-esque or like Outland style with a little bit of like alien, weird, kind of dreamy, strange expressionist scenery and locations, like this is the book for you. What it has in there, it's really basic mechanic system that you can use or not as you're going through. But the heart of this book is just incredibly strange and interesting settings and people and locations with tons and tons of really great random tables. I mean, like, just go and Google, look at this art. It's all like wild, like bright colors and very surreal, talking about strange, alien caravans and locations and just like truly a masterful collection of great locations to add. If you're running any kind of like Wasteland style game, or this would be great for anything like a Free Marches style campaign that's heavy on exploration and just like visiting interesting game elements, like check out this book. No matter what system you're running, this is a great stop for imaginary dreamy fodder. If you're creating, games in other planes or entirely new worlds, highly recommend. So again, that was Ultraviolet Grasslands and the Black City. And seriously, folks, just do yourself a favor and check out some of the art just online of this book. It's gorgeous. Did you find it, Neil? Are you looking at some of the...
Holy cow.
Yeah.
A series that it makes me think of, which was super popular, real bummed it only got one season so far. Fingers crossed. It makes me think of Scavenger's Reign.
Yeah.
It has really interesting vibes of just stuff that is truly alien.
Like, I just, opened this up. The Forest of Meat is the name of one of these locations in here. All the rules for, like, running a caravan, lots of random tables for interesting treasures and trinkets, caravan quests, just all kinds of really great stuff. Talking about, like, system agnostic, like, how you can introduce things like undead or alien creatures, or, half people, half beasts. Like, a lot of good theory and inspiration that applies to all systems.
So one of the things that, like, I think goes to the heart of, like, why Celeste and I bring these things up is, like, there could be something in here that changes the way you game forever.
Yeah.
And again, worst case scenario, you figure out stuff you don't want to do. Oftentimes with a book, like, you just read a book cover to cover. Fun fact, everyone, that's how books are intended.
Yep.
I don't need to get into it. But the idea that, like, I'm just looking at excerpts and one of the options is biomagical corruption.
Yes. Oh, their corruption and their magic mechanics are so interesting.
Yeah. Like, the idea of just adding that to, like, a portion of a campaign because you've gone into an area that magic is broken, or, like, you add that to your entire campaign, just the world itself. But basically, exposure to failed spells, dangerous magic, random ghosts, and mutagenic blights, source corruption, biomancers, and, like, these are all the options of, like, why this could happen. You roll on the table and you see what happens.
They have lots of also just like beautiful neutral maps too and locations. So they're like, here's like a planned route and, 6 locations that would be great along it. And that's perfect for like a party that is traveling from place A to place B. And you want to spice things up with some interesting, highly magical or, sci-fi-esque encounters. Like, it really is just a trove of brilliant ideas and imagination.
Yep. 2024, any nominee. And if you wanted just the PDF, $30.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted the PDF and the print, it's $50.
Yeah. The layout is truly beautiful. Truly beautiful.
We'll have a link over to that on Exalted Funeral, unless I can find a more direct link, which is often what I try and do to as best support the creator as possible. This may be our best bet. But yeah, there'll be a link in the show notes to go check this out. And Celeste just made 50 of my dollars go away. Good job.
It's so cool. It's like really, he's reading it like every night, and everyone's like, Beck, look at this location. I'm like, that's so cool. And then he keeps doing it. I'm like, how can a book have this much cool stuff in it?
Well, yeah, it's also why, like, literally right next to me is Worlds Beyond Time, sci-fi art of the 1970s. I've talked about it before, but like that's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like just having a book of art to get inspired is
huge.
Is a good choice. And then this one also has mechanics.
Yep.
So. But with that, we'll turn out the lights. We'll head out of the gym. But before we go, I want to implore you, the listener, to join the forums, the Discord, Twitter, and anywhere else you can find us and take part in these challenges, exercises, and other amazing conversations being had.
To do that, head over to bit.ly/DM banter and try some DM-Nastics so your players don't ask, do you even live?